Let me tell you about the German colony, one of Jerusalem's most enchanting neighborhoods, and a place that represents something truly unique in Israeli urban life. Picture a wide, tree-lined boulevard where the aroma of freshly brewed espresso mingles with the scent of jasmine from hidden gardens, where 19th-century stone houses with red-tiled roofs stand alongside modern cafés filled with young professionals tapping away on laptops, and where, on any given evening, you can hear conversations flowing seamlessly between Hebrew, English, French, and a dozen other languages. The story of the German colony begins in 1873 when members of the German Templar Society, a Protestant sect from Württemberg, Germany, arrived in Jerusalem with a vision. They believed that living in the Holy Land would hasten the second coming of Christ, and they set about creating a model community that would demonstrate Christian values through practical work and excellence. These German settlers brought with them engineering expertise and architectural sensibilities that were revolutionary for Jerusalem at the time. They built sturdy stone houses with thick walls that could withstand the harsh climate, high ceilings that kept interiors cool in summer, red-tiled roofs, arched doorways and windows, and beautiful gardens. Many of these houses featured inscriptions in German with biblical verses, some of which you can still see today if you know where to look. The main street, which we now know as Emek Refaim, was laid out as a wide boulevard lined with trees, creating an atmosphere quite different from the dense, winding streets of Jerusalem's old city. The Templar colony thrived for several decades. The settlers established farms, vineyards, and workshops, introducing modern agricultural techniques and building mills and small factories. They became known for high-quality craftsmanship in carpentry, metalwork, and wine production. They established schools, churches, and social institutions, creating a self-sufficient community with a distinctly European character that stood out dramatically in Ottoman Jerusalem. But history had other plans for this German community. When British forces captured Jerusalem in 1917 during World War I, the status of the German Templars became complicated. As German nationals, many were interned or deported, and while some returned after the war, the community never fully recovered. Then came World War II, and in 1939 to 41, the British authorities interned the German residents and eventually deported most of them to Australia. The beautiful stone houses and properties they had spent decades building were left behind, emptied of their original inhabitants. After Israel's establishment in 1948, these abandoned Templar properties were taken over by the Israeli government and allocated to new Jewish immigrants and Israeli families. The neighborhood's character began to shift dramatically, developing over the following decades as a mixed neighborhood with a variety of residents, from working-class families to professionals, from religious to secular. But the real transformation, the one that created the German colony we know today, began in the 1980s and accelerated through the 90s and 2000s. English-speaking immigrants, particularly from North America, discovered the neighborhood's extraordinary charms. They saw the beautiful historical architecture, the tree-lined streets, the proximity to the city center, and the emerging culinary and cultural scene along Emek Refaim Street. Property values began to rise as young professionals and families renovated the old Templar houses, often investing amounts equal to or exceeding purchase prices in gut renovations, with imported Italian kitchens, designer bathrooms, and sophisticated garden landscaping. Today, the German colony is home to approximately 5,000 to 7,000 residents, and it has become one of Jerusalem's most expensive and prestigious addresses. The neighborhood is more secular than nearby Baka, with about 50 to 60% of residents identifying as secular or traditional, 30 to 35% as modern Orthodox, and only a minimal ultra-Orthodox presence. This makes it quite different from many Jerusalem neighborhoods, creating an atmosphere where Shabbat is respected by some, but not observed by all, where many restaurants and cafés stay open on Saturday, and where cars continue to move through the streets on the Jewish day of rest. The demographic is notably cosmopolitan. Anglo immigrants from North America, Britain, South Africa, and Australia make up perhaps 25 to 35% of the population, with Israeli-born residents comprising 40 to 50%, and other immigrants from France, South America, Russia, and elsewhere filling out the remainder. There's also a growing international professional community, people working for NGOs, diplomatic missions, and international organizations who are drawn to the neighborhood's sophisticated, European-like atmosphere. The age demographic skews toward young professionals in their 20s through 40s, young families with children, and empty nesters, creating a vibrant, energetic feel quite different from quieter, more residential Jerusalem neighborhoods. The absolute heart and soul of the German colony is Emek Refaim Street. This wide, tree-lined boulevard is arguably Jerusalem's most famous street, a place that on summer evenings and Shabbat afternoons becomes a promenade where thousands of residents and visitors stroll, creating a vibrant street life that's rare in Jerusalem and feels more like Barcelona or Paris than the Middle East. The street is lined with dozens of cafés with extensive outdoor seating, where you'll find Jerusalemites engaged in the city's favorite pastime, sitting for hours over coffee, conducting business meetings, catching up with friends, or simply watching the endless parade of humanity flow past. There's Café and Café Rimon, Jerusalem institutions where families gather for elaborate breakfasts. There's Café Mizrahi with its trendy atmosphere and excellent coffee, Aroma with its reliable quality, and the Coffee Mill with its intimate neighborhood feel. But the German colony isn't just about coffee. The restaurant scene here is considered among Jerusalem's finest, offering a sophistication and diversity rare outside Tel Aviv. You can find upscale Italian at Little Italy or Luciana, Mediterranean fine dining at Gabriel or Mona, excellent fish at Olive and Fish, gourmet burgers at Burgers Bar, Mexican at Topolopampo, and Asian fusion at Joy Grill and Beer. The neighborhood offers a mix of kosher and non-kosher establishments, various levels of kashrut certification, and many restaurants that stay open on Shabbat, reflecting the secular character of much of the community. The quality is consistently high, the atmosphere sophisticated, and the prices, well, they reflect the neighborhood's upscale status. Real estate in the German colony tells a stark story about how dramatically this neighborhood has transformed. A small one-bedroom apartment now costs between 2.8 and 3.8 million shekels, roughly $800,000 to $1.1 million. A three-bedroom apartment runs from 5 to 7 million shekels. But the real crown jewels, those original Templar houses with their thick Jerusalem stone walls, high ceilings, red-tiled roofs, and private gardens, can command 10 to 18 million shekels or more, sometimes exceeding $5 million. Monthly rents are equally eye-watering, with a two-bedroom apartment costing 7,500 to 10,000 shekels, roughly $2,000 to $3,000 per month. This makes the German colony accessible only to the wealthy or to those willing to stretch themselves financially to live in this special place. The renovation culture in the German colony is intense and unrelenting. Walk through the neighborhood on any weekday, and you'll hear the constant sound of construction, jackhammers, saws, and workers shouting in Hebrew, Arabic, and Romanian. Major gut renovations are standard, with high-end finishes expected as a matter of course. Homeowners install imported Italian or German kitchens, designer bathrooms with premium fixtures, smart home systems, and invest heavily in garden design and landscaping. Many try to preserve original architectural features like arched windows, wooden shutters, and stone floors while adding all modern conveniences. Renovation costs often equal 50 to 100% of the purchase price, and the process of obtaining permits from the Jerusalem municipality, especially for historic buildings with preservation requirements, can be lengthy and frustrating. Education in the German colony reflects the neighborhood's secular character. While there are numerous preschool options, including some bilingual programs catering to English-speaking families, the elementary and high school options lean heavily secular. The prestigious Henrietta Sold School and Gymnasia Rehavia are the top choices for secular families seeking academic excellence, while Leada offers democratic, progressive education with child-centered learning. Religious families in the German colony often send their children to schools in nearby Baka or Katamon, creating a daily commute but allowing them to access the modern Orthodox infrastructure of those neighborhoods while enjoying the cosmopolitan lifestyle of the German colony. Religious life in the German colony is present but less dominant than in Baka. There are several synagogues, including Moreshet Yisrael, which welcomes Anglo families and offers services in both English and Hebrew, and the Ramban Synagogue with its traditional Orthodox approach. But many religious residents walk 10 to 15 minutes to pray in Baka's larger selection of synagogues, including the famous Shira Hadasha Partnership Minyan, or the conservative Kol Hanashama. The German colony's secular majority means that Shabbat has a different character here. While you'll see religious families walking to synagogue on Saturday morning, you'll also see many restaurants and cafés open, cars on the streets, and a general atmosphere that treats Saturday more like a weekend day than the holy Shabbat that defines neighborhoods like Mea Shearim or even Baka. Transportation is one of the German colony's great advantages. The Jerusalem light rail has revolutionized accessibility, with the first station stop on the western edge of the neighborhood, providing direct access to the city center in just 5 to 10 minutes. Trains run every 5 to 8 minutes during peak hours, and the journey is pleasant and reliable. The neighborhood is also served by numerous bus lines running along its main streets, and it's highly walkable with wide sidewalks, tree-lined streets, and a generally safe pedestrian environment. You can walk to the Old City in 20 to 25 minutes, to Mesila Mall in 15 to 20, and everything within the neighborhood itself is within a 10-minute walk. But here's the great frustration of German colony life: parking. This is perhaps the neighborhood's single greatest challenge. Street parking is extremely limited and requires resident permits that cost 300 to 500 shekels per year, but don't actually guarantee you a spot. Meter parking along main streets has 2-hour limits and is expensive. Private parking is rare and extremely valuable, adding 500,000 shekels or more to a property's value. Many residents find themselves parking several blocks away from their homes, circling endlessly on Friday afternoon looking for a spot, or paying for expensive monthly parking in nearby lots. On Emek Refaim itself, especially in the evenings and on weekends, parking is essentially impossible, a source of constant frustration and conflict. The daily rhythm of the German colony is distinctive and intoxicating. Weekday mornings see the café culture in full swing, with outdoor tables filled with laptop workers taking advantage of remote work flexibility, sipping excellent coffee and conducting video calls with colleagues in Tel Aviv or San Francisco. The school run is less intense than in family-oriented Baka, but you'll still see parents walking children to nearby schools and GAN. Joggers and cyclists take advantage of the relatively flat terrain, something rare in hilly Jerusalem. During the day, the pace is more relaxed, with stay-at-home parents and young children, retirees enjoying long coffees, and service workers making deliveries to the many restaurants and shops. But evenings are when the German colony truly comes alive. The restaurant scene peaks with families dining out, young professionals gathering for drinks, couples enjoying romantic dinners, and the street life becoming vibrant and festive. In summer, this scene extends late into the evening, with cafes and restaurants packed until midnight or later, creating an atmosphere more reminiscent of European capitals than the Middle East. On weekends, including Shabbat, Emek Refaim becomes absolutely packed. The street fills with a mix of religious families walking to and from synagogue, secular Jerusalemites out for brunch or coffee, tourists exploring the neighborhood, and people from all over the city coming to enjoy the cafes and restaurants. Street performers set up on corners, artists display their work, and the atmosphere is festive and international. For religious families, this can feel uncomfortable, a weekly reminder that they're living in a largely secular environment where Shabbat is not universally observed. But for secular and traditional families, it's one of the neighborhood's great pleasures, a chance to enjoy Jerusalem's best weekend scene without traveling to Tel Aviv. The professional profile of German colony residents is notably high-achieving. The neighborhood attracts people working in high-tech as software engineers, product managers, and entrepreneurs. Lawyers from the many law firms in Jerusalem, physicians and healthcare professionals, teachers and professors, media and journalism professionals, finance and accounting specialists, government employees, and NGO workers. Many residents commute to Tel Aviv by train, a journey that can take 90 minutes to 2 hours each way, leading many to negotiate hybrid schedules or work remotely. The rise of remote work since COVID has been a particular blessing for the German colony, allowing more families to maintain their Jerusalem lifestyle while working for companies anywhere in the world. The social scene in the German colony is sophisticated and cosmopolitan. While there are Anglo community organizations and support networks for English-speaking immigrants, the atmosphere is less insular than in some other Anglo neighborhoods. Integration with Israeli culture is more common, Hebrew is spoken more widely in social settings, and there's a greater mix of Israelis and immigrants in social circles. The café culture is central to social life, with regular gatherings happening over coffee rather than in homes. Book clubs operate in both English and Hebrew. Running clubs meet regularly. Hiking groups organize weekend trips. And networking events bring together professionals from various fields. The First Station Complex, a beautifully renovated historic railway station on the neighborhood's western edge, hosts farmers markets on Friday mornings, concerts and festivals throughout the year, and provides a large open space for families and children. But the German colony is not without its challenges and contradictions. The cost of living is extreme and rising relentlessly. The real estate prices I mentioned are just the beginning. Daily expenses are high, dining out is very expensive, parking fees add up, and property taxes are substantial. Too high incomes are often necessary just to maintain a middle-class lifestyle, and young families find themselves stretched thin financially. The space constraints are real, with apartments small by North American standards, limited storage, and many buildings lacking the parking that most residents desperately need. The gentrification of the neighborhood has created real tensions and concerns. Longtime residents on fixed incomes are being priced out. Working-class families who've lived here for decades can no longer afford the rising rents and property taxes. Economic diversity is declining, replaced by a growing concentration of wealth. The neighborhood's character is changing, with upscale businesses replacing older, more modest establishments. And there are real questions about whether the historical character that makes the German colony special can be preserved in the face of intense development pressure. For religious families, the German colony presents a particular set of challenges. While there are synagogues and religious communities, the infrastructure is much less developed than in Baka. The Shabbat atmosphere is less pronounced, with cars, commerce, and crowds continuing throughout the day. Kosher options are more limited, and the general secular character of the neighborhood means that religious families can sometimes feel like a minority, swimming against the cultural current. Yet, despite all these challenges, for thousands of residents who have chosen the German colony, the calculation is clear. They've traded suburban space and affordability for the privilege of living in one of the most beautiful, sophisticated, and vibrant neighborhoods in Israel. They've accepted the parking nightmares and small apartments in exchange for the ability to walk to world-class restaurants, sip coffee on tree-lined boulevards, and live in buildings with over a century of history. They've embraced the complex identity of being both residents of ancient Jerusalem and citizens of a modern, cosmopolitan urban environment. What they've gained is extraordinary. On a spring evening in the German colony, as the sun sets over the Jerusalem hills and the stone buildings take on that famous golden glow, as cafés fill with animated conversation in a dozen languages, as musicians perform on street corners and children play in the First Station Complex, as the aroma of fresh-baked bread from artisanal bakeries mingles with jasmine from hidden gardens, you can understand completely why so many have chosen this place. The German colony represents something rare and precious, a neighborhood that honors its historical past while embracing a cosmopolitan present, that maintains authentic Jerusalem character while offering sophisticated international culture, and that provides a quality of urban life unmatched almost anywhere in Israel. For those who can afford it and who value what it offers, the German colony isn't just a neighborhood, it's a lifestyle, a statement, and for many, a dream realized in the heart of the Eternal City.